so they were not seen as people but as a good.
Owning slaves was never legal under British law, but in a cynical, deliberate loophole, for 150 years, trading in slaves was. It says so explicitly in the careful calligraphy of the Charter of the Royal African Company. It was granted by the last king named Charles II, in 1663.
I mean, these goals were the goals of the royal family. Not only investing in, they were heavily engaged with how this company was practicing their business.
King William III received shares in the Royal African Company. His successor, George I, was also a shareholder, and his descendant, George IV, was a proponent of using slaves on Caribbean sugar plantations, and that only scratches the surface of what research is turning up.
The takeaways is that I think that the royals were way more involved than I initially actually thought.
On visits to Africa, Charles has appeared very aware of the damage that slavery has inflicted.
The appalling atrocity of the slave trade and the unimaginable suffering it caused left an indelible stain on the history of our world.
Still, it made headlines when the palace announced just last month that the king is personally supporting de Koning's research and will ensure the collections at royal palaces are made available to her. Charles's evolution towards a more honest discussion mirrors a broader shift in British society over the legacy of slavery. The city of Bristol, once a hub for the slave trade, has been at the center of it.
So this is where the statue of Edward Colston once stood.
Edson Burton has researched the transatlantic slave trade and the local men who became wealthy off of it, including Edward Colston.
He's everywhere here, isn't he? So he is everywhere here. Beacon Tower was actually Colston Tower. We're on Colston Avenue. So Colston Hall was named in his honor.
For a long time, most people here overlooked Colston's dreadful business practices and believed his philanthropy, supporting schools and hospitals, was how he should be remembered. But then came Black Lives Matter, and his statue became a target.
As I was watching, we saw the statue literally sail from the plinth and land on the ground.
The angry crowd dragged it to the water's edge where Colston's slave boats once tied up and dumped it in.
And it was that moment where you feel like you're standing on one side of history in another.
The debate here now is about what kind of statue belongs where Colston once stood and what best reflects Bristol's complicated past.
The process of renewal has been going on for much of my lifetime. Halting, stuttering, sometimes crashing. But the idea that a monarch needs to feel that they are actually in tune with a new nation, not with just the conservation of an old identity, but how can we arrive at the consensus of an identity going forward?
The king's evolution, though, doesn't go far enough for Cleo Lake, a Bristol activist who used to go to a school that still bears Colston's name. She wants the monarchy to pay reparations to the descendants of slaves.
Reparations is about repair and also restoration, returning the people who you've harmed as close as you can to when they wouldn't have been harmed.
At the archives, the researchers don't want the question of reparations to overshadow this unique opportunity to pursue their royally sanctioned detective work.
Chris, do you actually think that Charles's decision to get involved now, as he has, marks any kind of turning point?
I think people who wanted to see Charles push this issue forward are pleased with that, but Camille de Koning says for her it's less of a turning point, more of a starting point, because there are these collections with so much detail about the links between the monarchy and slavery that not just her, but researchers who follow her can now really start to get a much more fulsome picture.
All right, Chris Brown, thank you.